Thank you. That was just terrific. And again, it just goes to the cross-sector nature of the world today. The idea that the Sustainable Development Goals coming out of the United Nations are in fact setting an agenda for business opportunities and cannot be reached without business is a remarkable statement. Our last segment today is also very exciting to me. We've talked throughout the day about the role of CEOs, about the extent to which companies can or cannot make change unless the CEO really understands it and has a vision. And I'm delighted to welcome to the stage two CEOs who really have a vision, CEOs whose companies Michael Porter and I have been talking about and citing as examples for many years since the article first came out. And so I'd like to welcome Marcelo Castelli, who is the president and CEO of Fibria. Fibria is a Brazilian pulp and paper company, and you'll hear from Marcelo what they have done that is quite different from other pulp and paper companies and the impact it's had on communities. And I'd also like to welcome Sven Tore Holsether, who is the president and CEO of Yara International. Yara is a Norwegian company. It is a chemical company that focuses on agriculture and fertilizers. And I think you'll hear from Sven one of the most remarkable stories about how a company can truly achieve change at a national level in Africa. And we're very pleased to have as our moderator Tensie Whelan, who is the director of the Center for Sustainable Business at the NYU Stern School of Business, and before that was the president of the Rainforest Alliance. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm delighted to be here to moderate this last conversation with two industry leaders who have really embraced the concept of shared value and who, because they run companies and are in industries that are very up close and personal with natural resources and with the people that depend on those resources, I think have a lot of experience in figuring out what the path is toward both addressing the Sustainable Development Goals, but also creating shared value and positive net impact in their value chains. I'm delighted to be introducing Marcelo Castelli, who is known as Castelli, and I have had the pleasure of visiting his company and the incredible work that they're doing in Brazil when I was running the Rainforest Alliance. And they are the largest eucalyptus plantation or pulp and paper company in Latin America and have significant acreage that they protect in the Atlantic coastal forest and work very closely with a number of communities to really provide sustainable livelihoods. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what he has to share with us. And Sven Tore Holsether is the CEO of Yara International, and they are also the world's largest producer of ammonia, nitrates, and NPKs, which form the basis of their core product lines, which are fertilizers and industrial solutions. Yara has also really worked hard, and you'll hear a bit about this, across the world, but most particularly in Africa, to work with shareholders to really build sustainable livelihoods, sustainable agriculture, and food security. We will be taking your questions through the Pigeonhole technology, as everybody else has been doing. Hopefully it will work for me, and we'll have 5 minutes at the end of this conversation for that. So we just heard a great conversation from the previous panel about the Sustainable Development Goals, and we'd love to hear from you both about how those have been driving progress and sort of innovation and risk avoidance, really, and opportunity in your businesses. So Castelli, let's start with you.
Okay, thanks, Tensie. The first, I would like to mention that this event is really good and a very food for thought for everyone here. A quick talking about who we are, and we are a 6 years or 7 years old company, but with a history of more than 40 years, because we merged two companies to create Fibria. It was Aracruz and it was VCP. Why I mentioned that? Because the SDG, it's part of our life since Ara Cruz was at that time, was one of the co-founders of Global Compact. So since then, we started to work with this different vision, not only inside the business, but outside as well, to understand the dynamics, what I call the stakeholder dynamics, rather than shareholders dynamic. I pretty much understand the 17 goals, and we see our company connected with all of them. Of course, with some of them directly, that is climate change, water preservation, restoration, or biodiversity protection. But most important goals for me is the last one, it's the 70s. That represents a cooperation, partnership that will, only with that will allow us to move on and to create a huge impact and to make the change on the marketplace, on the field that we operate. So we are pretty much convinced that this is the way to go. We are currently in our company making some adjustments on our sustainability long-term strategies to see if we are missing something. Remembering that since we created in 2009 our company, after the merger, we were living in a perfect storm. We were born with a huge debt to pay, and in the middle of the crisis that no one have a clue at that time what should going on in the market. So we decided to look to the mega trends that we found 4 big mega trends that was helpful to really to create the new company or rethink the business. They are globalization, demographics, climate change, and technology. All done together, we created scenarios, and we decided to create a company that will reshape the way we have been doing business in Brazil in this planted forestry businesses to pulp and paper later on. The idea behind of that is to create something that we call the same concept of shared value that we call admired profit. Being a public company, we cannot deliver the results, financially results, good results, I hope so, and of course to maximize the profit and to abandon the other things, especially working and playing absolutely in Brazil. That is an underdeveloping country with a lot of inequalities, social demands, etc., etc. So we see pretty much in line with the SDG, and we will revert in a couple of weeks saying that we are totally engaged on it.
Could you give us an example of partnership as the most important goal for you? An example of a partnership that you developed that you think is really important for the SDGs and for the company's competitive advantage?
Okay, again, if you want to really scale up and to get bigger impact, our case, I mean, we decided to bring more to get what we call a social licensee to operate, especially in Brazil, in an environment that we were operating at that time, because we were living there a civil war in certain areas that we were having our forestry activities. Somebody that have been stealing our wood, putting fire on our forestries. They are kidnapping the community. It was an organized crime, by the way. So together with the community, with the government, with other NGOs that supported us, and also with some representatives from our shareholders, like Instituto Votorantim, we started to address a strategy how to deal with that. So partnership, Tensie, it's really important because we need to agree that we don't know anything. We don't know everything to come with a solution. So not only the financial support that is good in a certain point in time, but this is not the best from the organization. We are not pursuing what you don't want your check. Just write me a check that I will take my own. Now, we want your brain, we want your ideas together with us to solve the problem. That's one of the examples that after the conference, we started to cooperate, and that's what you saw. And also Rainforest Alliance was one of our partners that helped it to metrics and to understand the way.
Thank you. Sventori, could you talk a little bit about Yara and the SDGs and also the climate agenda and the types of things you're doing, and then maybe some concrete examples as well?
Absolutely. And the establishment of the Sustainable Development Goals and also the agreement in the climate conference in Paris in December is a great step in the right direction. And Yara is a fertilizer company, meaning that we produce nutrition for the crops. And why is that relevant for this audience? Well, it is relevant because today there are more than 7 billion people on Earth. 800 million people don't get enough food today. And agriculture represents about 25% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the world, 70% of the water usage, and population is growing. And how do we ensure that that can be managed in a sustainable way? These challenges are so large that it's impossible to solve it as a single company. Even as a sector, it has to be much broader than that. We have to look across industries and also including governments and NGOs as well. We believe it is possible to produce enough food for the people in the world, both today and also in the future, and it is possible to do that with less water usage. But our approach to that has been to look across the value chain, create new alliances in order to ensure that we have a holistic view of the food production, taking into account all stages of it. And equally important to this is that we make business models that ensure that we create inclusive growth. Because I mentioned 800 million people in the world don't get enough food today. A large share of these 800 million people are farmers, and a large share of them live in Africa. And we need to create business models that also include them.
Thank you. So for both of you, because and we've heard about this a bit in your earlier remarks, both of you, because of your engagement with people who come from very poor sectors of society, smallholders and others, and also because you both interact with natural resources and the environment, your companies and your industry have come under criticism at times, right? So how have you what types of shift in mindset have you had within your company, and how have you engaged with partners to really build an understanding, a shared understanding and shared value, so you could solve problems together and move beyond that criticism and that sort of sense of concern that different stakeholders have? Be terrific to hear from you, Castelli, a bit more about how you've done that, and I know that you've developed very specific win-win solutions for some of the different stakeholders that you've worked with, and be terrific to hear a bit about that.
Thank you again, Amanda. As I mentioned, the logic of stakeholders, the externalities are really an issue for everyone, especially for a company like we have, Fibria, is that we run a lot of, we are landowners in a big proportion. So our forestry-based activities, we have a lot of bad neighbors in a way that they are really good persons, but they don't have opportunities. They have a poverty surrounding us, and how to help them, how to set a strategy on business to make them to get more admired profit. We share profit. So the idea is to create value and share the value. When we think share value, it does not mean that we are going to extract value to somebody else to get more value for us. That's the meaning of the business purpose of Fibria. So we started to understand the landscape. We brought them, small farmers, as the first movement to allow them, give them the technology, give them the finance, the proper helps, and also to help them to manage their property, to only use a part of their properties to raise forests for us. And we secured the contract in a reasonable price, in a very transparent price, not to blame with them, not to give them extra risk. So it has been for more than 30 years in a row, and we scale it up here. The first idea was to have 5% of the wood that we have in all our mills coming from those guys, those smallholders, our partners. But currently we have more than 10 to 15%. The total segmentation with it and the mechanisms to deal with the third-party producers, not only the smallholder farmers and certain medium farmers, owners. So we have right now 30% of our wood that reach the mill gate in our mills. They are coming from those guys. And this is a long-term thinking. This is viable economically and financially, and we don't want to move from it, especially in Brazil, that we need to deal with the landless movement. Also, with this change in mind, looking to externalities, we had to understand that we should work very hard and should work combining needs with our possibilities. Not saying more about it, but I would like to address on top of it that we are now scaling up. We are having some communities that they don't have land as well. So what we are doing, we are setting back our plantations of eucalyptus, giving them in a comodatum land, trying to incentive to create cooperatives or associations to really to plant food, to plant crops, whatever, to their own consumption, and also we are linking them, helping them to link their products to the final consumption to avoid certain trading in the middle of them. Very helpful, very fruitful. We are developing very good results on it. And also the landless movement, very aggressive movement. We were invaded for a long time, and we decided to stop to fight. We set an agreement. We agreed to disagree, but we started to try to find solutions in an open dialogue. Currently, it's public. We settled an agreement with 11,000 hectares from our side, or more, 16,000 hectares for the other company that we are half owner. So we represent the biggest and the unique private sector reform, land reform in Brazil. We are not good guys. We just received the money from the government. We allow them to support in their settlement, to bring in them technology, and they are ideologists. We are not saying to them, give me the money back or give me certain sharing value, just producing eucalyptus. They will never produce eucalyptus. So we agree to disagree, but everything is possible if we have open mind to try to address solutions. That's a big example, especially in Brazil nowadays.
Thank you. So Antório, if you could share with us your formula for shared value success, and also talk a bit as well about some of the innovation that you're undertaking in Tanzania. I think the work there is just fascinating.
Sure. Well, Yara is a company that's been around for 110 years, and certainly there's been a development through that history, starting with producing products to having more focus on the application of the product and sharing knowledge on farming as well. And we as a business, we're faced with the same challenges as society at large. And being in agriculture, working with farmers, we can certainly make an impact. And we can do this through knowledge sharing and providing platforms for farmers. And I brought a picture, if I could get someone to put that on, because this is a representative farmer for us in Thailand. This is in the countryside, about 2 hours drive from Bangkok. This guy is running a farm. He's producing Chinese cabbage. It's about an acre. And he was already using fertilizer. He knew some basic techniques on how to improve crop yields. Through working together with our agronomists, he was able to increase his yields by 20 to 30%. And in addition to that, the quality of his cabbage also increased. So when wholesalers travel around in this particular area, they have 3 price categories, 1 being the lowest, 3 being the best. For him, they established category 4 because he had even better quality. To him, this means extra income. It means that today he's able to lease the land next door to him to expand his operation. Now, does a farmer with a 1 acre farm make a difference to a company that produces 30 million tons of fertilizer? Individually, no. But this is what it's all about. It's working with individual farmers and scaling up. And in Asia, in the last 12 months alone, we have been able to meet with 250,000 farmers in farmer clinics or face-to-face to teach farming techniques and the right use of fertilizer. And then it starts to really matter also to the top line and the bottom line of our company, because this is not about CSR as an isolated event. It's not a one-off stunt. It's an embedded part of our business strategy to drive demand for our products. So that's Asia. But in Africa, the challenges are much greater. In Africa, 80% of the farmers don't use fertilizer at all. And when I'm out there in the fields and see the impact that we can make, we see yields doubling, tripling, and even 5 times as large yields in their farms. That is really meaningful. That means going from a situation where you're barely able to feed yourself, or not even that, to get some extra money, and then what happens is children get sent to school, and then investing in a house. It's a huge change in the everyday livelihood of the individuals. And for us, that's what it's all about, to help the local communities. But how do we do that? And in Africa, it's particularly challenging because the infrastructure is not in place. So we started out by sending fertilizer. We realized we needed to have hubs. So we invested in warehouses. We get the fertilizer out there, but we realized, well, the farmers don't have the techniques in place in order to apply it. Well, then we need to do that. Then we need to have seeds in place. We need to have financing in place. We can't do all of that ourselves, so we have to create alliances. And in Tanzania, that's what we did. We created alliances together with government, with strong sponsorship from President Kikwete of Tanzania. UN is involved, Alliance for Green Revolution of Africa, and several business players in order to create an alliance to support the growth of agriculture in Tanzania. Today, this is a program that has and is about to trigger $1 billion in private sector investments, and it's benefiting 2 million farmers. And we have 80 partners in that alliance today. So through that work, through the long-term thinking, it is possible to make a difference.
So your investors might say, well, you're acting like an NGO. Why are you doing all that work to go out there and help all those people and work with the government and worry about roads and warehouses and all this stuff? You should be focusing on your business, right? What would you say to them?
Well, I think this is what we've always done. And if you go back in history to when Yara was founded in 1905 in Northern Europe, well, we set up business where the natural resources were in place. There were no towns. We had to also create societies, set up with schools and hospitals and so on. So it's not something that is new to us. It's just that we haven't had to do it for the last few decades, but now it's the opportunity to develop new markets. And I think we should view emerging markets or markets where there are challenges in the same way as we do when we set up greenfield factories. Then I have a 10, 20, 30-year horizon in order to justify that investment. Why shouldn't I do just the same thing when I look at developing new markets for our products?
Thank you. Castelli, what challenges remain for your company, but also if you take a step back and you look more broadly for natural resource-based companies in terms of scaling up shared value, the types of approaches that you've been pioneering and leading? What's holding you back? What's holding the world back? What advice would you give? And how do you see we can move forward faster?
Yeah, difficult to say because in the short term, we are living in a world of very difficult times. I mean, we have a climate change. We have a social and political instability, especially in Brazil, on an emerging market, or everywhere, I would say. We have refugees trying to get a shelter. We have a lot of issues, water consumption or carbon kidnapping and so on. I think all of those they're not optimistic, they not give us hope, but I see a lot of opportunities, especially when we look to our business that we are planting forestry. And as I used to say, we plant ideas, we cultivate relationships, and we harvest results. That's all about our business. And we need to be conscious about the environmental things, not only on the mills, but also on the forestry. We plant, just to let you know, we have an adaptive strategy toward to a climate change. We are using big data to model and to predict what's going on. And fast-growing foresters like we have, it's a good thermometer to understand what's going on the planet. And I can tell you, we are having problem everywhere. How to develop new clones. I'm not talking about genetic modified clones. I'm talking about clones that will be more suitable to consume less water. And there are a lot of comments regarding how much it's water intensive, the pulp. I would say that Fibria has an approach that we are carbon footprint signatory, we are water footprint. We have a negative carbon impact. And the water, we have eucalyptus planted in a mosaic very close to the natural forests that you saw when you have visited us, allow us to preserve the water. On the contrary, the eucalyptus consumes water and evaporates, and there is a cycle that the water is flowing in that respect. So it's a different way of thinking. And we are preparing the company, or natural resources company, to tell this history, to change the way we behave. For that, we need academic, we need technicals, we need things, because those things are not technical. Those things are more emotional. And we are not saying that are right or wrong. We need to deal with that. So how to deal with the dilemmas. And last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have a one silver bullet to solve the problems. If you look to the 17 sustainable development goals, we don't have a one solution. So we should stop saying that we have excludent strategies. We think in the long term, we think that we have complementary strategies. That, I think, is the challenge for every company in the world.
Could you share with us a bit your perspective about what is happening in Brazil and where things are going to go in terms of the political and economic situation there?
Yes, I can. How many hours I have? Okay. Brazil, it's a emerging country. We were being benefited by the super commodity cycle, so a lot of money coming on Brazil. The FX reached 1.64 reais against dollar. And that was not natural, okay? That was artificial, and we lost the timing to address the structural things in Brazil, like social, like education, like several other important things to a nation to be more competitive, to be more inclusive, and to be on the right track. It means that we now are in an economical problem, but created most likely to the political decisions, and we have in political instability. So right now, if I'm not wrong, the impeachment has been on the way on the Senate to vote and to change, to have a change in power. This is going to give us extra hope. Maybe change always brings certain hopes that the things will be addressed. Important thing, the Brazil is not the Brazil that we live. Sometimes we think that Brazil, we are so optimistic or we are so pessimistic. That's the Brazil way of thinking, the extremes. So we believe that, we still believe in Brazil as a future country, but we need to address things. And our philosophy, despite the the environmental business challenge we have right now, especially with a lot of corruption, we are doing the right thing. We don't take fast tracks, we never take it, and we are going to do what's needed for a long term, because we believe that this will overcome in a certain point in time.
Thank you. Sventor, can you tell us a little bit about, for Yara, how you plan to scale up your investment and engagement around shared value and how to deal with some of the challenges you're confronting? And particularly, can you talk to us a little bit about where you see the role of consumers, employees, investors? You know, how can they help or hinder what you're doing?
Sure. I think what we're seeing now is that we're finding a lot of business opportunities through shared value, and we find business models that can work. Now it's important that we're able to create scale. Isolated attempts certainly help, but we need to bring this on a much bigger scale than what we're doing now. And I was at the World Economic Forum in Davos, and certainly that was an exciting event. But for me, the most exciting part of that was when we signed an agreement to create what's called a patient procurement platform. What that is that we're across industries and including NGOs and the World Food Program of UN, we create an entire value chain from seeds to fertilizer, through the chemical side, and with the Rabobank as a financing institution, and then with the World Food Program at the end, creating certainty that if the farmers produce in a certain way, in order to minimize the environmental footprint, maximizing yields, doing it in a responsible way, then there is a certainty of an offtake at a fair price. And this agreement was then signed in Davos, and it creates $750 million of purchasing power going into this. It helps or it benefits 1.5 million farmers. So that is one nice example, I think, of what is possible. Now, going forward, we need to multiply this many times. And I see a lot of our customers, a lot of our customers' customers are getting more and more involved in this and more focus on a responsible way of producing food. And we've heard from Nestle, we've heard from stories from Unilever as well. We work with both of them in order to help to create value chains that matter also from a sustainability point of view. But it's also important that as consumers, every day we make choices with our money on what products we buy. And businesses respond to demand, and I think as individual consumers, we can do more by being more conscious of the choices we make in order to also reward and drive demand for food that is produced in a sustainable manner.
Thank you. Well, we now have the questions. There they go. It's now time for your questions. So we have one for Castelli, which says, how do you deal with air and water pollution coming from your mills and affecting the health of local communities? How much do you invest in new tech and R&D to mitigate this?
Oh, thanks for the question. First of all, we are fulfilling and following the best available technology and best management practices. And I can guarantee that we have what we call a bio searching before. Let's talk about water first. Before pollution, potential impact. Before we take the water, before we send our effluent, after and after, for a long time with universities that we are not interfering with the fauna and flora, aquatic fauna and flora. And we operate in using some rivers that are also supplying water for potable water for millions and millions of people. So no complaints about it. We're pretty sure that we are fulfilling all requirements. Remembering that despite we are operating in Brazil, we sell our pulp everywhere, and we fulfill the most restricted questionnaires or certification everywhere. The air pollution, we have also as well. We are monitoring the neighborhood. We have our online measurements in our recovery boilers, in our boilers. So we try to really and we show those results as well for the environmental agencies. So we're running a full transparency, and we don't have been any kind of healthy or in our local communities created by that. Let me return to the water on the forestry again, because I think the water footprint. If we use a jacket, how much water is inside of it? The same question for Coca-Cola. Okay, the same question for a meat or a beef or a fish or whatever. So we should understand the water footprint for all products to decide accordingly. Eucalyptus needs water because we need water. We are talking about a biological asset. But the rainforest needs water, the same amount of it. And we have been planting, and we're trying to combine, and we have more than 40 years of the same plantation living in a harmony and without any problems to dry the soil. R&D, climate change, etc. We are investing heavily in technology, and also we are going to help other industries because we are going to run in a bio-oil, we are going to run in a bioenergy, we are going to run in a biochemicals, sugar platform, and also nanocellulose. That's the new bio strategy of a company like Fibria that will benefit the whole society toward to a low carbon footprint industry.
Thank you. So for Svantore, how many farmers or communities have Yara been supporting through the shared value initiative so far, and how connected? How does that result in? What are your business results from that? I guess is the question.
Well, our business results are very dependent on our engagement with the farmers. We're a farmer-centric company, and we create value through the sale of more complex crop nutrition, and we need to demonstrate that every day out there in the fields. And as I mentioned with the farmer in Thailand, the improvement from commodity product to more value-add product was 20 to 30% increase in yield for him, and also better quality. We are dependent on demonstrating that we can create value to our customers in order to get value for ourselves as well. So that is completely connected to our results every day. When it comes to the number of farmers, well, I mentioned the patient procurement platform. That's 1.5 million farmers. The example in Tanzania, that's 2 million farmers. We're working with 250,000 farmers in Asia. In Brazil, we had 5,170 workshops last year with farmers supporting the use of more advanced fertilizer to drive higher yields for the farmers.
Thank you. So there was one question that got a number of votes, and maybe you can both answer very quickly, half a minute each. What's your commitment as an engaged CEO who believes in shared value to get others in the business community thinking this way too? So Svantore, start with you.
Well, we work on this every day, and I'm optimistic on this. I see that there is a lot of engagement in the business community. We are talking with companies across the whole value chain now on how can we view this in a more holistic view, and I can just measure it by my own time. How much time do I spend out in the fields and with other stakeholders, and that's a substantial part of my time, and that is my commitment to this, and it's again not driven as a CSR in isolation. This is our business model. We need to be out there. We need to work with all the stakeholders and get commitment on this.
Thank you. Castelli.
For me, it's the way that I grow up. I mean, I have learned how to think in the others, to be in contact. We believe that we are not business to business. We are not business to consumer. We are people to people. I never met society. I never met the market. I never met in person. So we believe that it's all about relationship. It's all about to do something that I would like to get from somebody else. Empathy. So it's a personal philosophy, values, and the company that I work for with amazing team, they think on the same way. So it's a pleasure to work in a company like that. The changes started from inside to outside, more emotional, more passionate, and from the top to the bottom. That's, I think, we believe in. I'm fully engaged on those things.
Thank you, gentlemen.